Right then, Celtic opened the season with a win, and yeah, 3 points are 3 points. But let's not kid ourselves that performance wasn't even close to the standard this club should be setting. It was scrappy nervy and at times downright frustrating to watch. For a first match at home, coming off the back of a summer where fans were crying out for reinforcements, it was far from convincing. And you could feel that tension around Celtic Park. Folk weren't just expecting a win, they were expecting a statement. What they got was a sluggish 90 minutes that only sparked into life thanks to one man, James Forrest. Now let's get one thing clear. This wasn't the kind of performance you expect after a summer break. It wasn't fast. It wasn't fluid, and it certainly wasn't confident. The first 20 minutes had a bit of tempo, sure. Kieran Tierney looked sharp on the left, trying to stretch the play, hitting some decent early balls into the box. Alistair Johnston had a few long diagonals as well, and it looked like Celtic were trying to be a bit more direct than they were last season. But after that short burst of energy, the spark disappeared. It all became really flat. Sideways passes back to the keeper players, hesitating on the ball. You could hear the groans starting around the stadium, and they weren't wrong. The midfield trio just didn't click. McGregor, Hattade, and Negron looked like they'd only just met. The chemistry was off. The decision-making was slow, and the urgency nowhere to be seen. It wasn't just the midfield either. Yang started out wide and looked completely lost. You could tell early on that he wasn't at the races. Every time he picked up the ball, his instinct was to play it safe, knock it backwards, let someone else deal with it. Contrast that with Forrest later in the match. When he got on, he took the ball, drove forward, beat his man, crossed early, varied his delivery. That's what Celtic were missing for most of the game. Someone willing to take responsibility. Yang might have the pace, might have the tools, but right now he looks more like an impact sub than a starter. And that's no surprise to most fans. Asher, that's exactly why people were shouting for a new winger all summer. Not because they enjoy moaning, but because they saw this coming. And let's talk about Adam Ida up front. Look, he's got the physique, he's got the work rate, but once again, he failed to really impose himself. You need more than just running an effort at this level, especially when you're leading the line for Celtic. There were a few moments where you thought, right, this is it, but then the final touch let him down or he'd be caught on his heels. It's not enough. Celtic need a proper number 9 who's going to score 25 goals a season, someone who terrifies defenses. And the reality is, if Brendan Rodgers is looking at this squad thinking Ida is the guy to lead the line for an entire season, then that's a massive red flag. The club spent big on him, yes, but that can't be the end of the conversation. If they're serious about competing, not just domestically, but in Europe too, then another striker has to come in. But let's pull it back for a second, because despite all the complaints, all the flat passages of play, and all the individual performances that were way below par, Celtic did win. And that win came courtesy of a deflected strike from Luke McCowan. Not the prettiest goal, not one for the highlight reel, but it doesn't matter. It counted. And fair play to McCowan. He came on, did what was asked of him, and he's proving to be a useful option off the bench. That's what you want from a squad player. Someone who might not start every week, but who'll take his chance when it comes. And again, it underlines a bigger issue. Celtic are still relying on players like McCowan and Forrest to bail them out in tight games. That's not sustainable. As for the rest of the team, there's not much more positive to pull from it. The defense looked shaky at times. Scales and Carter Vickers weren't really tested, but there were still a few nervy moments. The goalkeeper didn't have much to do, though he did tip one onto the bar late in the first half. The fullbacks were probably the brightest part of the back line, with Tierney especially putting in a good shift before he went off around the 65th minute. He was seen smiling after the game, so fingers crossed that it's not a serious issue. But it did raise questions once again about depth in that position. When Tierney went off, it was Trusty who came on, and that meant shifting Scales out to left back. Not ideal, especially when he'd actually been solid as centre half. And that brings us back to the same old story. Recruitment. Celtic haven't done enough. The warning signs were there all summer, and now we're seeing them play out in real time. No left back cover. No quality winger added. No out-and-out goal scorer brought in. And yet again, it's players like Forrest, who's been here forever, stepping up and dragging a team over the line. It's not right. This club should be setting the standard, should be blowing teams like St. Mirren away at home, not scraping. How wins through deflections in the dying minutes. Let's be honest, St. Mirren are no mugs. They finished in the top 6 last season, and they've made life difficult for Celtic in recent years. This isn't the first time they've made things tight at Celtic Park. They're organized, compact, and make the most of what they have. But even with all that, Celtic should have enough to win comfortably. They had the ball, they had the territory, but they didn't have the ideas. And that's what's most frustrating. You can forgive a poor performance if the effort is there, if the urgency is there. But too many players looked unsure of themselves, didn't seem to know what the plan was. And that's got to fall on the manager as well. Brendan Rodgers has got work to do. This isn't the same Celtic side he inherited first time around. Back then the team was flying and the style of football was easy on the eye. Now it feels like everything's a bit more rigid, a bit more cautious. Players are turning back instead of turning forward, and that spark, that aggression in possession is missing. If the plan is to play this kind of safe, methodical football all season, then something's got to change. Because it's not just about winning, it's about how you win. This is Celtic. Expectations are sky high for a reason. Even the pitch looked off. Dry, patchy, and clearly not in the best condition, which is a real concern when you consider this is as good as it's going to look all year. What's it going to be like in December or January? It's another little detail, but it all adds up to a bigger picture. Things aren't as polished as they should be. From the squad depth to the stadium itself, there's a sense that things have been allowed to drift. And for a club of Celtic size and stature, that's not acceptable. And yet it's not all doom and gloom. There are still players to come in. There's still time for Rodgers to get the team playing the way he wants. But it has to happen quickly. The Champions League qualifiers are just around the corner and there's no margin for error. Performances like this one against better opposition won't be enough, not even close. But one last word on James Forrest, because he deserves it. It's easy to overlook him, to write him off as past it, to focus on his age rather than what he brings. But time and time again, he proves people wrong. He's still got the legs, still got the brain, and most importantly, still got the heart. When he came on today, you could feel the lift around the stadium. He brought control, urgency, and most of all, belief. Celtic owe this win to him. Without his influence, this might have been a very different story. So yes, Celtic got the win, but they'll need to do a lot more if they want to keep pace this season, both domestically and in Europe. This was a warning shot. Let's see if they take it seriously. So after all that, you're probably thinking, if we're being this critical after a win, what's it going to be like after a loss? But that's just it. This isn't about being negative for the sake of it. It's about holding the club to the standard we all know it should be at. Celtic didn't just scrape through last season by luck. They were dominant, aggressive, clinical. There was a purpose in every movement and identity in the way they played. And that's what felt so absent in this opening match. The cohesion's not there. The energy's not there. And for large parts of the game, you could see players looking at each other like they were waiting on someone else to take charge. And that's why someone like James Forrest stands out so much. He wasn't waiting on a signal. He wasn't looking for someone to give him permission to attack. He just did it. Straight away, he brought intensity, not just in terms of running, at defenders, but with decision making. His crosses weren't hopeful punts into the box. They were measured. Some were whipped in hard, some hung up at the back post, some cut back low. That kind of variety comes from experience, and that experience is invaluable. You saw it. Even the crowd reacted differently when he was on the ball. It wasn't just groans and sighs. There was genuine anticipation. Something might happen. And that's exactly the kind of lift this team needs right now. Now let's get into the big elephant in the room: recruitment. This squad is still 2, maybe 3 starters short of being where it needs to be. And fans have been saying that since May. It's not new. It's not reactionary. It's not a meltdown after one game. It's reality. You don't need to be a seasoned football scout to see the gaps. You look at the bench and you're asking yourself, who here changes the game? Where's the option? If Tierney pulls up, where's the firepower? If Ida's not scoring, where's the danger out wide? If the wingers aren't delivering, right now the answers just aren't there. And the fact that Brendan Rodgers had to rely on Forrest again, and a guy who's already given everything to this club for over a decade, says a lot. It's a great story, sure. And no one's denying he deserves the praise, but the question is, where's the next Forrest? Where's the young wide player who's ready to take games by the scruff of the neck and do exactly what he did today? Young, isn't it? Not yet. Abada's gone. Maida works hard, but doesn't offer enough in the final third on a consistent basis. That's why the calls for a winger all summer weren't just noise. They were urgent. And today proved it. Then there's the striker situation. It's not about throwing Adam Ida under the bus, but the truth is, he's not the answer. not for a full season. Maybe he plays his part. Maybe he pops up with a few important goals, but if Celtic are going to compete on multiple fronts, league, Cubs Champions League, they need someone who can bully defenses, link up play, and score in tight games. And right now, that player isn't there. The club can't afford to gamble again. They did it once with Ajeti. They've done it with Giacomakis, who worked for a while, but still wasn't a consistent long-term solution. And now they're doing it again with Ida, a player who came in with questions and still hasn't answered. Them. Even the substitutions raised at eyebrows. No Inamura on the bench, Shin Yamada left out again. And when the time came to change the game, it's Johnny Kenny who comes on. No disrespect to the lad, but the general feeling is that he's still a work in progress, possibly going out on loan. And yet at 0-0 with 20 minutes to go, that's who we're turning to. It doesn't exactly scream confidence in the depth of the squad. And when you've got Shin Yamada waiting for his chance, it's fair to ask what's going on there. Are we hiding a gem on the bench, or is he just not in the manager's plans? Either way, it's not ideal. And the longer the game went on, the more it felt like that infamous match against St. Johnstone a couple of seasons ago. You know the one, chances missed, crowd getting nervy, groans after every back pass, a general sense of dread creeping into the stands. Thankfully, this time, there was a different outcome. But the atmosphere was eerily similar. It was less frustration and more anxiety. Like people were waiting for the inevitable. And when that winner went in, it wasn't pure joy. It was relief. A massive wave of relief. People jumping up and down, not because it was a brilliant goal, but because they knew what a draw would have meant on the opening day. The narrative that would have exploded. The pressure that would have instantly mounted on the board, the manager, the players. And make no mistake, they avoided that fallout by the skin of their teeth. And here's the thing, it shouldn't be like this. Celtic should be winning games like this with authority. St. Mirren are well-drilled fair play to them. But Celtic are miles ahead in terms of budget, facilities, squad size, support. It's not arrogance, it's just the truth. And yet for long stretches of the match, you wouldn't know it. The passing was slow. Players hesitated. The movement off the ball was poor. Even set pieces were tame. And you're left wondering what exactly have they been working on all summer. Because if this is the product after a full preseason, then there are some serious questions to be asked about the intensity and focus in training. The midfield's another worry. Callum McGregor's the heartbeat of this team, but even he looked off the pace. Hitadi tried to get on the ball, but his passing radar was miles off. Negron, in what was effectively his competitive debut, looked a shadow of the player from preseason. There were a couple of moments where he got on the ball and looked promising, but overall, he looked like the occasion got to him. And that's understandable. It's Celtic Park, it's the opening day, it's a crowd expecting fireworks. But that's exactly why you want seasoned players around him. That's why you want depth rotation, real competition for places. Because when you don't have that, you end up with performances like this. Now let's talk about the pitch. Dry, patchy, and looking worse than it should in early August. That's not just a minor aesthetic issue. It affects the tempo of the game, the way the ball moves, and the confidence of players trying to play fast attacking football. It's worrying. If this is the best it's going to look all season, what's it going to be like in the heart of winter December, and January will be a nightmare if it's already showing signs of neglect. And that ties into the wider issue of how the club is being run. Not just the squad, but the infrastructure, the match day experience, the stadium, the feeling that things are just being left to tick along. And that's not good enough for a club of this stature. Because let's be clear, it's not just about domestic dominance anymore. That's the minimum expectation. Celtic fans want more. They want progress in Europe. They want a team that competes, that plays fearless football, that sets the tone. Not just in Scotland, but on the continental stage. And right now, this version of Celtic doesn't look ready for that. Not with this level of performance. Not with this level of recruitment. Not with this level of urgency. Still in amongst the frustration, there are glimmers of hope. Tierney looked sharp before going off. The signs are there that he's ready to be a leader in this team again. Forrest reminded everyone exactly what he brings. And that's not just sentiment, it's substance. And McCowan, for all the chaos in the final third, kept his composure when it mattered. It might have taken a deflection, but it still needed to hit the target. And he did what needed to be done. So where does that leave us? Well, it's 1 game, 1 win, and 3 points. But if Celtic want to build on this, it has to be seen for what? It is a warning. You can't sleepwalk through a season. You can't keep relying on late goals and individual brilliance to get you out of jail. You can't go another transfer window without properly addressing the glaring holes in the squad. Because eventually that luck runs out. Eventually you run into a team that punishes you for your wastefulness, for your sloppiness, for your indecision. The challenge now is clear. Step up, raise the level, bring in the players, get the tactics sharp, get the intensity back. Because the fans see it. The league is improving. Teams are trying to play football. They're not just lumping it long and sitting back anymore. And if Celtic don't rise to that level quickly, they're going to find themselves in trouble. The gap at the top is only as wide as your commitment to staying there. And just one final thought. Fans don't complain because they enjoy it. They complain because they care. Because they know what this club is capable of. Because they've seen the heights. And when those standards aren't being met, it's not negativity, it's passion. And this weekend was full of it. Nervous, frustrated, relieved passion. Celtic won, but now the real work begins. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important. For Celtic FC fans, there's been a mounting sense of unease around Celtic Park in recent weeks, and the latest whispers echoing through Glasgow's East End suggest Brendan Rodgers' time at the helm could be drawing to a close. Although no official announcement has been made, sources close to the club have hinted that tensions behind the scenes have reached a boiling point. It's said that a run of uninspiring performances has chipped away at the board's confidence in Rodgers' leadership, with certain directors reportedly questioning whether he remains the man to steer Celtic through the challenges of European competition and maintain domestic dominance. While Rodgers still holds a significant amount of goodwill from his first spell in charge, some believe the current version of the team lacks the spark and identity that once defined his tenure. There's a feeling that the club is at a crossroads, and rumors suggest that meetings have already taken place between key figures to discuss contingency plans should a parting of ways become necessary. Fans too have begun murmuring their discontent, especially after recent stumbles in matches. Many expected the boys to win comfortably. It remains to be seen whether this chatter turns into concrete action, but the mood is unmistakably shifting. Adding fuel to the speculation, insiders claim that certain players within the squad have begun to question Rodgers' tactical decisions. And man management. There's talk that the dressing room isn't as united as it once was, and a few senior figures are allegedly frustrated with inconsistent team selections and an overly rigid approach to in-game adjustments. These murmurings have made their way to the wider support base, with some fans noting a visible lack of passion and intensity on the pitch. The atmosphere during home matches has become noticeably more subdued, with sections of the crowd beginning to voice their frustrations more openly. Meanwhile, club legends and pundits alike have started to weigh in, many expressing concern over the team's trajectory under Rodgers' second stint, although no one from the Celtic hierarchy has gone. On record, the silence has only intensified the sense that something is brewing behind closed doors. If results continue to falter, pressure from both supporters and influential figures within the club could leave the board with little choice but to consider a change. As ever in football, especially in Glasgow, perception can quickly become reality, and whispers have a way of gathering volume. It's important to remember that Rodgers was welcomed back to Celtic Park with high expectations, and his return was meant to herald a new era of success and stability. But as the weeks have gone by, those initial hopes have given way to doubt and concern. There's been talk that the board may have underestimated the challenge of rekindling the same magic that defined his first spell in charge. Critics have pointed to a lack of progression in playing style, with the team struggling to assert themselves against both domestic rivals and in European fixtures. Some observers suggest that Rodgers' tactics, once lauded for their precision and flair, have grown predictable and stale. Behind the scenes, whispers persist that the club has quietly sounded out potential replacements, with names already being floated as possible successors should the situation deteriorate further. While Rodgers still commands respect, the reality of football management is unforgiving. In a club as demanding as Celtic, patience is a luxury rarely afforded when results don't match ambition. With every draw or defeat, the narrative continues to shift. and the notion of Rodgers' departure feels less like wild speculation and more like an inevitability waiting to unfold. Further complicating the matter is the club's relationship with the supporters, who have always played a crucial role in shaping the direction of the team. In recent weeks, the Green Brigade and other vocal fan groups have grown increasingly restless, their banners and chants hinting at dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs. Although Rodgers has not publicly clashed with these groups, some sources suggest there's been a cooling of relations, with the manager reportedly frustrated by the growing criticism and the pressure it brings. In the social media sphere, calls for change are becoming louder, with now Rodgers out trending sporadically after poor results. The Celtic board, historically sensitive to the sentiments of its passionate fan base, may find itself forced into action if the unrest continues to escalate. There's even been talk that potential candidates are already being discreetly contacted, with the hope of preparing for a seamless transition should Rodgers be shown the door. Of course, none of this is confirmed, and the club remains tight-lipped. But the air of uncertainty is undeniable. As always in football, perception often precedes reality, and right now the perception is that Rodgers is on increasingly thin ice. In the midst of all this speculation, Rodgers himself has remained publicly composed, offering no indication that his position is under threat. However, those close to the club believe that the pressure is mounting behind closed doors, and that a single damaging result could prove to be the tipping point. There are whispers that the board is split, with some directors keen to give Rodgers more time to steady the ship, while others believe a decisive change is necessary to salvage the season. Training ground sources describe a tense atmosphere, with players uncertain about what the future holds. Some younger members of the squad are reportedly anxious about their development under the current regime, while others simply want clarity and direction. As the transfer window looms, the club faces crucial decisions not only about personnel, but about leadership. If Rodgers is indeed on the brink, then timing will be key. Acting too late could derail the entire campaign. For now, it remains a rumor, a whisper in the corridors of Celtic Park. But in Glasgow, where football talk never sleeps and the stakes are always high, such rumors have a way of becoming reality far quicker than anyone expects. Hello, fan! Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.